Welcome to The Leading Edge, leadership lessons to help you bring your mission to life. Here's Mendy Odlin and Stacy Collins.
Isn't it exciting when new people come to be part of your community? And isn't it even more exciting when they decide to come back? I'm Mendy Odlin.
And I'm Stacy Collins.
And if you ever felt like your visitors were coming through a revolving door, you are not alone. So it is one thing to invite your people to attend your services, and it takes a very different approach, an intentional approach to cultivating engagement in order to make sure they keep coming back. So what is your organization's engagement strategy? What are your systems for welcoming newcomers and putting them at ease and encouraging them to return? Today, we're going to share some success principles, some great ideas, and maybe a few things to avoid in this episode of The Leading Edge.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to sharing my experience as the small group program director at Unity of Houston and share some of the ways we've adapted our systems in response to COVID and our growing virtual community.
But before we dive in, I first want to send out a very special thank you and a shout out to Unity of Buffalo, Buffalo, New York, and Unity of New Braunfels in New Braunfels, Texas. Thank you so much for your ties to support this program and help us make these leadership teachings and trainings and techniques available throughout the New Thought movement. We are so grateful. And if you would like to make a contribution, you can go to patreon.com/SpiritGroups, or you can reach out to me, Mendy Odlin, at P.O. Box 176, Lake Clear, New York, 12945. So, Stacy, it's good to be back. We had a little holiday break. You've been out doing ministerial types of things. We were talking about how to engage people into your mission. And last week we were off, but the week before that, we talked specifically about how to identify the people who naturally gravitate to your community. Like, who are your people? And then we explored some ways to reach out to them intentionally and to invite them to your local services, to invite them to your virtual services, or maybe to invite them to your small groups. So for our check-in, Stacy, what do you notice when you reflect on the people who naturally gravitate to your community? What do they seem to have in common?
Well, you know, Mindy, it seems like one of the things they have in common is they're looking for community, and they're looking for a place that is inclusive. They're looking for a place that's going to empower them on their own path. Like, they may be dipping their toe in and they want to try some different things, but they're really wanting to almost just feel safe in a place that kind of gives them permission to do so. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've also noticed during this time is our new people may be new in the building, but they have been watching us online for several months.
Yeah.
So they're new and they're very excited about putting faces to the community.
I bet.
Seeing online. Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. Yeah, people have been, maybe lurking behind the scenes online and thinking, one of these days when I can get in there, I can't wait to meet these people. And so that's starting to happen. Huh. Well, that's exciting. Well, one of the things that, as I reflect on, our last episode, which was about identifying who do you naturally gravitate towards, who's drawn to your community, because that's the easiest way, is just say, who are the people that just, when they come, it feels like home and it's easy. So who are those people? How do you reach them? And then what do you invite them to? And so we talked in our last episode about creating a strategy where you've got 2, maybe 3 places where you invite them in. Maybe it's your local service, or if you can't do that, your virtual service, or both. And of course, we're going to talk about small groups because it is one of the best ways to invite people in, particularly, friends of friends and colleagues and things. So we'll talk more about that. But as I reflect on last week and I think about what we're talking about this week, what they both have in common is it's a very specific chapter in someone's life when they're that bridge between thinking about finding spiritual community and visiting a spiritual community is a significant step on someone's spiritual journey. When you walk in as a visitor, that is a significant step. So in our last episode, we talked about how do you find those people just to even invite them in the door. Today, we're taking the next step on that spiritual journey, which is, okay, they walk through the door. They're in your living room. They're in your small group. They're in your virtual wherever, Zoom room or whatever that might be, or maybe they're in your sanctuary. They showed up. And now what? And this is like a whole nother piece of the puzzle. It is a completely different piece of the puzzle. So I guess what I would want to know from those of you that are listening and thinking about your own experience, whether it's as a newcomer, maybe you have some, hopefully you don't have horror stories, but maybe you have some lessons learned, or maybe you have some best practices that you'd like to share. Or maybe you, as a leader of a New Thought community, have some things that you've tried that work really well and you'd like to share those, or maybe you just have some questions. Regardless, we would love to hear from you. Stacy, how do they do that?
They can just give us a call, Mindy, at 816-251-3555.
Yes, and we'd love to hear from you. So call in anytime and share your stories about being a newcomer or helping newcomers feel at ease. So that's really what today is about. It's about getting intentional around what I call engagement strategy. So when someone walks in the door, how do you make sure they don't just keep on walking and you say bye-bye as it hits them out the back door? How do you create an atmosphere? And Stacy, you tapped on it already. Like, how do you create a safe atmosphere where someone can step in and feel comfortable coming back? So, yes, that's what we're going to talk about. And I think we kind of pick up where we left off with our last episode. So we talked about, having your strategy, who do you invite, and 2 or 3 options. And we're going to do the same thing today. So today is about figuring out, what is your call to action? What is the objective at this stage of someone's engagement in your community? And then create the plan to help you accomplish that action step, that call to action, that target. So I'm going to throw this out, Stacy, and you can add your experience and what you found. I'm going to say, without a doubt, the number one goal when you have a new person in your service, in your small group, in your online Zoom room, whatever that looks like, your number one goal is to get permission to follow up, to get that email address, to get an address, to get some form of permission, because that is what allows you, if you don't see them for another couple weeks, to have a way to reach out. So what have you found, Stacy, in terms of engaging and encouraging people to leave their contact information?
Yes, and I think most people, if they're filling out, whether you have, and I know we'll get into types of visitor cards, but electronic visitor cards, or whether it's on a piece of paper, or even if they just come to the welcome table and they ask you questions, they're usually at that point, they're curious enough, can we just send you a weekly email? And I'm always sure too, to let them know it's a once a week email. We're not going to be calling them. We're not going to be showing up at their house. This is just a weekly email, just so they can stay in touch. We also have an app, Unity of Houston, that people can use to stay on top of the news. So if they'd rather get their information that way, but it's always great. I find email address is wonderful. And what we do is we have the physical address as a option. And when they do that, we do follow up with them and send them a written thank you card. So,
very nice. Very nice. So all of that would be what I would call an engagement strategy. So this episode is really about what is your strategy? What's your game plan for when someone walks in the door, having them feel welcomed and embraced? And I'll share some of my, so I've been a frequent visitor because I've moved around the country a lot. And I love visiting New Thought churches. I absolutely love it. So I'll pop in whenever I have a chance. If I'm in your neighborhood on a Sunday morning, look out, and some of you listening, you might be able to say, yep, I remember Mindy popped in. And, and I'm game for whatever. You want me to stand up and say my name? I've got no qualms about that. I know a lot of people feel uncomfortable with that, but I don't mind. So I've experienced a lot of different processes. Some of them I've really loved. And sometimes I'm like, wow, this is something where clearly it's an amazing community where people are connected. I think, Stacy, sometimes when a community is super connected, it can be even more challenging to be embracing for the newcomers because everyone is so excited to see each other. So when you have a really tight-knit community, the training piece, like the intentionality around being a welcoming community, is not something to take for granted. Is something that needs to be taught as part of a mission-centric organization. Part of our mission is making people feel welcome. So what are some things that you all do at Unity of Houston to be intentional around welcoming your newcomers?
Yeah, so one of the things that we love to do is, of course, and a lot of churches do, we have a welcome table. And what I like to do when I'm at the welcome table, I have my eyes everywhere. I love to greet the people I know, but my eyes are out for the people that I haven't seen, and to just make a friendly, not intense eye contact. We all know that unity, intense eye contact, right? But just to welcome them. We even just have a big sign on our welcome table, just says, got questions. So they know that whatever it is, they can come approach. And then we have a gift for them. And I always like to ask, how did you find out? Or how many times have you been? And sometimes people say, well, I wasn't sure if I should come over here because I've actually been 4 or 5 times. It takes them a while to feel comfortable enough. So I think that's something to keep in mind too, is to reach out for contact, but also to know that people will kind of come into you at their own level of comfortability. And I think it's important to give that space too. So it's kind of a little dance there.
So I have to ask, what's the gift? What's the gift?
Ooh, well, you have to come visit Unity of Houston. Well, we have nice little gift bags that we have. Depends on the season. We have different books that we like to give away. Usually it might be an Eric Butterworth book. It might be Lessons in Truth. It's a Unity classic. And so we have also our purpose and value card in there. And sometimes something else, just a little goodie, depending. It could be chocolate if it's not too hot. Could be a little something else in there.
It's not too hot in Houston. Come at Christmas time and get some chocolate.
You don't want to give somebody a gift they leave it in their car.
Yeah. Hey, I'd take it. I like smushy kisses. So I love that. And, I have been, I've been at places where there is a welcome table and there are people there, and clearly people who know each other well. But I've also walked in and been like waving my hands in front of people to get their attention because they're so engrossed in conversation. So this is just because you've got people in a position doesn't mean that you're actually fulfilling what the intent of that table might be. I know when we were first doing our SpiritGroups training, before they were digital, before it was all online, we had trainings that were hosted by different ministries. And on the last day of the training, it's always a Sunday morning, and always our host ministry was on, so they had to step out to do their Sunday service. But there were always people from other churches that were there for the Spirit Group leadership training. And so what we did was we spent the morning talking about what it's like to be new, because so often we forget. We've been engrossed in our community so long that we forget what it's like to walk in and know nobody. So what we would do in our training on Sunday morning is, we'd connect, we'd talk about first time experience. I actually gave them a survey. Now, this is something that you'll see in the mega churches. They actually have secret shoppers who have a survey of things that they're looking for, and they will send secret shoppers to the church to give feedback on what is it like to be new. So I had my survey. I gave it to all the people who were not members of our host church, and then we went out the back door, because obviously we had our training there. So we all snuck out the back door, and then we all came in separately. So some people came with a friend, or some people would come with their spouse, but some would come alone, and we would just walk in as if we didn't know, if like we're not part of something. We didn't sit all in the same row and get introduced. We just scattered, and with the intent of put on your newcomer eyes. And if you haven't done this in a while, I highly recommend go visit a different denomination church than you're used to. Go to a Saturday evening, or, if you can't miss Sunday, go to a Friday night or something like that. Go to a Wednesday night. Go visit a church of another denomination and feel what it's like to be new, and then consider what it might feel like to be new and going through a personal hardship, which is what a lot of people are doing. So we can just go and pop in and say, okay, I'm just curious. But really, a lot of our newcomers are going through a challenging time. And we found, I remember one of our churches with just the friendliest. I mean, people were there about an hour early, like putting out the coffee, putting out the donuts, making everything pretty, making everything beautiful. There was someone stationed at every door. And when people walked in, they knew everybody. And so when the newcomers came in, we expected that it would be really welcoming, but it was not people's experience. And it's really helpful to get that kind of honest feedback, because otherwise, how would we ever know? It looks like everybody's connected. So, so do you have any ways of getting that kind of feedback, Stacy? Or have you ever done a secret shopper type of thing?
No, we haven't done that, but what we did do, and it's been a while, so maybe it is time to do another one, is as a staff, we did a meditation and imagined what it was like to be new. What do we want to experience? And we did this with our welcome team too. And then we walked the campus and we said, what would we notice? We tried to put it in our mind. What's the signage like? Would I know where the restrooms were? If no, what about youth and family ministry? Do I know that we even have one? All these kinds of questions that, but I like the idea of the secret shopper, because that can give you a different perspective, because it's still hard to kind of put on that new person hat completely. But it did give us information, because a lot of us noticed the same types of things as far as just even in the space. But I love the idea of doing it in real time. And see how we're being welcomed.
One of the ideas that came from that activity, because then we would have lunch together and we would debrief, what was your experience like? And it was just all kinds of ahas. And one of the ideas that came out of that I thought was just brilliant is, people saying, why can't we attract young people? Why don't we attract families? And so the idea that came out of that was, what if we hired a couple of, young people, millennials, to be a secret shopper to see what their feedback is? What if we hire a young family, husband, wife, and their kid to come be a secret shopper to get their feedback? You hire somebody and they come and it's like, I just want your feedback. Maybe they like it. Maybe they come and become a member, but really it's to get the feedback from those eyes. We did that with our ministry with a millennial. And I gave her the survey. She was a new member, and I asked her if she would be willing to walk through the service the next time she came, because she was a friend, an old time friend of mine who walked through, and she gave us the best ideas. So many great ideas, so much great feedback. It was totally worth it, to invest in that. But you may have some volunteers who want to do that as well. Invite your friend to be a secret shopper. Invite your friend, invite someone who's never been here before, someone who's in that target market that you might want to grow. Do you want to grow a family program before you spend a lot of money on advertising it? Wouldn't it make sense to see? I had a church that I had talked to, and they all said, oh, we want to grow our youth program. We want to grow our youth program. And I said, do you really? Because it doesn't look like it when you walk into the church. There's not enough volunteers in the youth program. It doesn't look like a church that really wants to grow its youth program. I said, do you want kids running around? And they're like, well, maybe we don't. We know that sounds right. We know we're supposed to want that, but do you really want kids running around? I was like, well, that's, what culture do you have? And if you're going to shift your culture, what do you need to have in place so that when those families walk in, I tell you, I've had a little kid with me, and you can tell when they want kids around, and you can tell when they don't by what people do. So let's kind of break this down. In our last episode, we talked about having a strategy of 2 to 3 things that you would use to invite people to, so that it's not overwhelming. And so the example that we talked about was, a live service. Obviously, our Sunday morning, that's our sweet spot. That's what we're used to. Lately, a lot of us have been going virtual, and maybe you have both, a virtual service and a live service. So maybe those are 2 invitations. And then, of course, small groups are such a great way to bring people in. So think about this in the context of each of these options. So someone comes to a live service, and I'll share with you what I've seen at the mega churches, because that's where I did my research, like what works. My experience being a newcomer at one of these non-denominational mega churches was so extraordinary. It was so powerful and so positive. So I walk in alone. Most people walk in alone the first time, and then they bring, then they bring the kid, and then they bring the spouse, and they bring their friends, because everybody's got to get the okay, and you do it in layers. So I walk in, solo woman, walking in alone. And what do? Well, first thing I see in the lobby, there's this huge map on the wall with all their small groups. So I'm like, oh, I want to get plugged in. I go to the wall. I just start looking at where's my neighborhood and what groups are in my neighborhood. And I'm there maybe 30, 45 seconds. And there's someone else looking at the wall and saying, hey, are you in a group? And I said, no, I'm here for the first time. They're like, oh, our groups are awesome. If you have any questions about our groups, let me know. like no pressure, just a real friendly, not even a name tag, not an official person, but just someone who had their eyes out for me. Like, oh, I just met someone who was really nice and cared enough to encourage me to join a group. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks. So then I go into the service and enjoy the service and the music and all that. And when it's time, that dreaded time, you're like, what are they going to do? What are they going to do to the newcomers?
Yes.
So they had on my seat, on everyone's seat, they had a postcard. And on one side, it had, here's the topic of the sermon for today. It had the website where you could go and learn more. It was like a brochure. And it had, here's when our newcomer spaghetti dinner is. So if you're new and you want to go to the spaghetti dinner, it's coming up, mark your calendar. And then a third of that was a tear off welcome card. And on one side was my prayer request. So if you have a prayer request, you can fill it out, put it in the offering basket when it comes by. And on the other half was, if you're new, put in your information. And you can put that in the offering basket when it comes by. Or if you've moved or changed your information or anything like that, you can update your contact information and put it in the basket. So everybody had one. There was nothing that identified me as a first-time guest other than the fact that I was kind of looking around and everybody else seemed to be doing something. So it was like all the members had something to do. And so I felt like as a newcomer, the only reason that they were able to identify that I was new was because I wasn't on a team doing something else, like that level of engagement. So I was not asked to stand. I was not asked to say anything. I was not given a ribbon or to wear or a flower to hold or a flag to wave or anything like that to indicate that I was new. But I had enough people softly say hello that I felt very welcome. And then at the end, so I filled out my thing. Third time I visited, I filled out my thing, put it in the offering. And then at the end, they said, by the way, if you're new, or even if you're not, if you would like to come to the front and ask us questions, we have a gift at the front. So it was interesting because it was in the sanctuary. They gave their sermon. And then at the end of the sermon, before they dismissed us, there was the welcome table with people at the front of the room waving and smiling, saying, we've got your presents up here and we can answer your questions and, all that. And if you want to come up afterwards and talk to us, come on up. And what I loved about it was, and I didn't go up there, but it felt very comfortable. It felt like I could have easily gone and had a conversation. And they had the, dangling the little party bag full of gifts. We did this at our community in Colorado where we would give away a daily word. Here's the daily word for the month to get to see, here's something to carry you forward. But you had to come and, we would hand it to you. Because I've been to other churches where it's like, oh, if you're new, we've got something at the back of the room, just fill it out. and so people can come and go without a conversation. So what are some of the things that you all do, Stacy, to facilitate connect, like not just here's a bulletin, not just give us your email address, but what are some things you do to actually cultivate connection with your newcomers?
Yeah, so usually if they come up to the welcome table, we definitely have a conversation. Like I said, we do hand the gift directly to them because it's just fun. Everybody loves a gift, right? And then afterwards, they do receive an email from our senior minister. And then I, as kind of the welcome team liaison, I've sent a follow-up email with 3 options of how to connect. And it's small groups.
Yes.
It's both of our services because usually the majority of our visitors come to our Sunday services. So I let them know that we have a Wednesday night sat song experiential service. And then we have a third group that meets on Sunday prior to service that's really connecting, and it's a drop-in group. It's called Sunday School with Adults, and they have a different speaker each week on a wide variety of topics. And it's a great way to get to know people and to just kind of get some flavors of all different types of things. And so I give them those, and I say, but I always finish with, if there's anything else I can do, we have a wide variety of things, just let me know if I can help you get connected in any way. And a lot of times people will answer, I heard something about such and such, or can you help me figure out how to sign up for this? Or, so it does work.
That's great. That is really great. And I love, I love the process that you have in place and the 3 options. Like, okay, here's 3 options, but it's not an overwhelming number of options. So those are some ideas for a live service, or even, we'll talk more about virtual services because there's some nuances for that when we come back. We'll also talk about small groups, because that's, to me, one of the most powerful things about having a small group ministry strategy is that it is great for engaging your newcomers. It's great for helping people feel comfortable where they may not feel comfortable walking into a big sanctuary. It might feel more comfortable going to a friend's house, stepping into somebody's living room. So when you introduce people to your ministry that way, what is your process for getting that contact information and being able to follow up and invite them to learn more? So that's where we're going. And of course, if you have your questions, call in. Stacey, what's that number? Where can they call?
Oh, it's 816-251-3555. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, we'd love to hear your ideas, and we'll be back with more of The Leading Edge in just a moment. So bring your ideas and your stories. We'll see you soon.
All right, break time.
Woohoo. All right, stop recording. It's not stopping. Oh, did you hit start, Stacey, by chance?
No,
It's not
I
letting
did
us
not
stop.
need to.
Try hitting stop and see if it